In today's webinar, we're going to talk about government benefits, how to acquire them, how to protect them. We're also going to have a little look into the new American Rescue Plan, about some of the benefits that came out and help support those with disabilities. I'm Keith Caldwell. I am a parent like you. I have a lot of questions for Ryan. I've been jotting them all down, so be ready for them, Ryan. And with that, I'll introduce you to Ryan.
Man, now I'm worried. Keith's been jotting down questions, and he didn't even prepare me ahead of time. Everybody, he's just gonna launch them on me. No preparation. So if I don't know an answer, don't get mad at me. My name's Ryan Platt. Keith and I have been partnering with great educational webinars and content, and partnering to bring you guys howtosecurethefuture.com as well, which is another level of education, but also of action, which is so important to get these pieces done. So check that out. And I've also been helping and serving families as a planner since 2005, and started our own firm called the Special Needs Plan, where we serve families in a one-on-one capacity all over the country. So we are always excited to do these webinars together. I think it's fantastic to do them with Keith, because he brings a whole different perspective, which is extremely helpful because it's normally your perspective. So, which is awesome. So I know we're going to talk about government benefits today. I know there's obviously a new COVID-19 legislation, as Keith mentioned, is the American Rescue Plan. So we'll touch a little bit about that in terms of what's in there and how that might impact folks with a diagnosis, and who may be receiving benefits already, and where that might help families. And I know before that, we just wanted to back up and then we'll obviously open things up for questions from people, which is always the scary part for me.
Now, I get to go first, though, Ryan. I get to go first.
That's right. There you go. Hopefully Keith, sends me a softball every once in a while. But when we think about government benefits, we're always thinking about the ones that are what they call needs-based, which means there's a resource limit to them or an income limit, which simply means that you can't earn a certain amount of monthly income, and you can't have a certain level of assets in order to qualify for them. Two of the major ones that we think about in this space of government benefits is called SSI, which stands for Supplemental Security Income. And that's a monthly income for so many individuals with a diagnosis that they've never worked before. They've had a diagnosis either at birth or sometime in their early childhood, and all of a sudden they turn 18 and they qualify for this benefit of SSI, and it provides this monthly income to them to have some level of dollars to provide some level of support for their very, very basic needs. Because as we've talked about in other webinars, it's not a ton of money. 2021, the max is $793 a month, I believe, from U.S. federal SSI. If you live in some states, the state might also increase that number a little bit. It just depends on which state you live in. But 793 is a pretty good number in terms of full SSI that your child may be receiving or might be eligible to out in the future. The other large piece of needs-based benefits is what's called Medicaid, or in California, it's Medi-Cal, because as I say to Keith, California is just a unique place.
It is.
So they need to rename it for themselves, which is good. I like that. I like a little creativity.
We call it Meta North Carolina.
See, that just wouldn't go well, would it?
No.
It's just too many words, too long. And that Medicaid can cover so many aspects of someone's life. It can help with healthcare, which that's where it helps a lot of individuals early on in their life, to help pay for doctor's visits or surgeries or even dental work. But as they age, there can also be money in there for long-term services and support. Things like supported employment or one-on-one job training. It can be for certain types of housing arrangements and dollars in there to help fund those kind of things. And then there's also another layer, which is called Medicaid waiver programs. And these are more state specific. So SSI and Medicaid are going to be federal items. And then you're going to have things that are called Medicaid waiver programs. And those are going to be state specific, state plans that you have to be a resident of that individual state to qualify for these waiver programs. Again, these waiver programs in individual states will do certain things, but they just provide more resources in order to provide more services. So, for example, sometimes waivers can pay for a qualified healthcare worker to come into the home. If health at home or healthcare at home on a daily basis is needed, it can provide for an individual to come into the home, and most of these individuals are called direct support professionals, right? DSPs is what they're called, and it can pay for them to come into the home and work on daily activities, help take your son or daughter out in the community and walk them through the grocery store, teach them how to shop, how to put a shopping list together, how to do certain daily life activities in order to improve their independent living skills, so that at some point, your child can hopefully live in some sort of other living arrangement other than with you. Right, that's one of the things we talk a lot about with our families. We've talked, on these webinars about. It can be a scary thing for both parents and the child to think about that out in the future. But we have to remember that 75% of adults with an intellectual or developmental disability live with their parents. 1 million of those families, the caregiver is over the age of 60. And 52% of those families, those caregivers, spend 40 hours or more per week in caregiving support for their adult child. So again, that's a massive lift. If that's you, that we might be leaving if we pass away and we're 75 and don't have any other thoughts or haven't looked into different things, that maybe government benefits can help pay for, right? So you're leaving that lift to maybe your other children. Right. I don't know that. And again, that's where we get into the action piece, but that's where also it's the understanding of what do these government benefits pay for, because it's amazing those million families, and they're probably not on here talking to us because almost all of those family studies tell us is that they're disconnected from government services and resources. So they don't even know what exists. Right. And that's why we love doing this, is to give you at least a starting point to start thinking about is okay, if all these things exist, how do I make sure I can get them? Right? It's great to know they exist, but how do I get them? Right? And that comes into starting to build a structure around your child. And when I think of structure, I think, really in order to qualify for these benefits, we need to build a financial and legal structure that protects your child and their ability to qualify and continue to maintain these benefits once they're approved for them and receive them. And so that involves other pieces that we've done webinars on before, but certainly pieces like special needs trusts and pieces like ABLE accounts, right? And certainly other financial and legal pieces that could be important, but also to understand which legal pieces to avoid, right? For your child to be able to qualify and continue to qualify. So some of those could be, you may have, or grandparents may have started a custodial account for your minor child, right? What's called a UTMA or UGMA, right? Well, those become your child's asset. So if those are some that are part of your current financial structure, that's going to cause an issue at some point down the road, right? So it's also, hey, we need to understand what government benefits are going to do, what maybe some of the options are, and then understand, okay, make sure we understand how to build the financial and legal structure that could surround them to protect them, and also which ones to avoid. And so so that's why, we're doing this government benefit piece to just answer questions about kind of those needs-based benefits. Maybe you have questions about some of the rules, maybe you have some questions about how to use them. And maybe you have questions about this new, American Rescue Plan that was just passed into law, right? It's kind of the third COVID relief bill so far.
Well, I got a couple questions, Brian, I'd like to ask, and they're not hard. You know me, my knowledge is somewhat limited on various areas. But I did notice, Brian, that we did some of these webinars before, but they weren't applicable to me at the time because my son was so much younger. But as he's turning 17 next month, I'm starting to think, he's turning 18. I got to deal with the guardianship. I got to deal with his post-18 ability to qualify for government benefits. So that's why I'm like, okay, I better pay close attention to this webinar today because it's applicable for me right now. So I have a couple questions that might be helpful for other parents as well. So is there an ability for parents to qualify for government benefits under the age of 18 of their child? And is it based on the parents' finances, or is it based on some other, or is there some waiver part? So the pre-18 and post-18.
Oh, yeah, good question. So if your child is under the age of 18, and we think about those needs-based benefits that I mentioned before, like SSI and Medicaid, what the Social Security and Medicaid is going to consider when your child's under the age of 18 is the parent's income and asset level. So if your income is low or your asset level is low, then you may be able to qualify for Medicaid, just under regular Medicaid rules for, different levels of families, right? Family of 2, family of 3, family of 4, family of 5. There's all sorts of different resource, asset and income limits for different size families when your children are under the age of 18. But it's going to be based on the parent's income and assets at that point. When we think of SSI and Medicaid, when your child turns 18, well, now that qualification changes. They no longer consider the parent's income and asset picture. They only consider the child's income and asset picture, which again, Keith, you make a good point, which again is why it's important to understand not only, your as a parent's financial picture, but also to dive into, okay, what does my child's financial picture look like? And what might it look like when they turn 18, right? And what I mean by that is simple things like, hey, I started a savings account for my child, for all my kids. And you know what? Grandparents put birthday money in there and Christmas money and Hanukkah money and, just graduation money from, moving from, elementary school to middle school to high school, right? Whatever it is. And holy cow, that savings account has $1,500 in it already, and they're only 10. Well, it's likely that if you stay on that trajectory, that's going to be too much money for them to qualify for the benefits when they turn 18. So it's understanding, and because I know that sounds weird sometimes to say, well, we have to consider your child's income and assets. And you're thinking, my child doesn't have any income and assets. That's why they're a child.
Right.
The definition of child, Ryan. Okay, and that's true. And because you might not think of it as income and assets, but it's anything, especially accounts, right? They probably don't have an income. You're right. Mm-hmm. But any account that they have that's either in their name or even jointly with you. Mm-hmm. Right? So if they're on a joint account with you, then again, you have to be cognizant of, how much is in that account. We have, different levels of folks who have children with disability. As we know, disability knows no boundaries, right? No socioeconomic boundaries, no religious boundaries, no racial boundaries, no gender boundaries, nothing. It impacts everybody.
Right.
So when we think about that, we have some folks who are, business owners who use their children maybe in pictures on websites and, in magazine, marketing materials and advertisement, and may pay them money and put it into a Roth IRA for them. And they're thinking they're doing a good thing because they're allowing them to save some of the money. Well, that's not a good thing if your child has a disability, because that's going to be their asset. Mm-hmm. And so again, it's just, you ask a good question, right? So pre-child, pre-child,
pre-18.
If you're pre-child, you're not on this call.
That's right.
Because you wouldn't even be in this world at all, pre-child. But I shouldn't say that, I guess, because you could be a sibling. Right. On here without kids, so I should take that back. My fault. But right, if you are pre-18 or your child is, then it's obviously your income and assets, except for what's called Medicaid waiver programs. Mm-hmm. Why do they call it a waiver? Well, because it waives some of the financial requirements. And some of those financial requirements, if you're approved or your child is, they're going to waive the qualification for your income and assets if your child is at the age of 18. Which is why, we always say to parents, hey, we want to dive into the waiver programs that are available in your state to make sure that you apply for the ones that you're eligible for. Because if there is, a wait list for them to receive them, that at least you're on that wait list. Because again, you could start receiving in-home therapy, and you could start receiving, nursing care if that's needed, all through these Medicaid waiver programs without you having to qualify from a financial standpoint.
Okay. I'm going to take a couple questions real quick from the people patiently waiting over there, and I'm going to ask you something that I wanted to follow up on. About Medicaid waivers, because as I said, as my second point, I'm trying to understand that a little bit better. All right, let's see here. If you get an adoption subsidy, can your child get SSI?
Yes.
All right. Jumana is saying, is SSI based on the parent's income if the child is 13 years old? And I think the answer to that is yes.
Yes.
Unless you can get the waiver program, potentially, right?
Yeah, but SSI, you still won't get SSI.
Okay.
You could get waiver. You could get approved for the waiver, but that's going to be services, not direct cash.
Okay. Pam's asking, are any of these benefits geared towards Medicare?
No. Medicare is not going to be income or asset based. It's going to be based on the disability. And if an individual is under the age of 65, it's going to be based on either their work history and then they themselves being deemed disabled by Social Security and begin to receive Social Security disability income, which is totally different then supplemental security income in terms of qualification. And if they start receiving Social Security disability income, then 2 years later, they can begin to receive Medicare for healthcare purposes.
Okay. Okay. So you can have SSI income and SSDI income?
Yes. Yep. And we've had those situations. So, for example, we've had families whose child turns 18, they qualify for SSI, so they're considered disabled by Social Security. But let's say they're working part-time, right? And they work part-time at a movie theater, grocery store, wherever. And they've worked there for a hospital, and they've worked there for 8-10 years, working 10 to 15 hours a week. Well, all of a sudden, they're going to get enough credit hours in the Social Security system themselves, based upon their own work history, that all of a sudden they'll qualify for SSDI while they have SSI and while they're continuing to work. Isn't that crazy?
That is awesome.
So we do have families that are in that situation.
Okay, let's ask the question regarding the American Rescue Act. I know that they passed, that was for, what do they call it? Home and community-based services. What does that mean in English? What does it look like to parents who have kids who I assume are over 18 who are going to be benefited from this? Because apparently this is a big win for the ARC and other disability advocacy groups. And I'm going to give a big shout out for the ARC. I'm going to put in there a link for you guys to consider donating directly to the ARC, because they do tremendous work. And if you guys are in the ARC out there, put in your comments what ARC you're from, and people come support those guys. ARC does great work. So tell me about the home and community-based services grant that just came through for $25 billion.
Yeah. So the home and community-based services allows individuals to continue to live independently in the community instead of in institutions or nursing homes or a facility. And so what does that mean? That means that people who have those may have a certain number of what they call hours of support. So there's different levels of support. So someone might have 10 hours of support a day. That means they have workers coming into where they live to help them be independent. And that can range from, again, helping them shower, helping them prepare their meals, helping them prepare a grocery list, going out in the community with them. Could be one-on-one job support, as I mentioned before. Again, depending on what it could be, helping them with therapy needs, physical, OT, speech, those type of pieces that it could entail, depending on just what level of care they may need. It can help provide those services, right? All the way from full kind of 24 hours a day, 7-day care at home, to, hey, somebody needs to come in 5 hours a day, right? To help check on, what does the apartment look like? Is it clean? Are they taking a shower? Are they doing their laundry? Helping them just make sure that they're organized to do those things.
Who administers that? Is that like here in California, Medicaid?
Well, Medicaid, yes. So the state, yes. Medicaid is kind of a federal and state partnership, but the states. So good question. So there's federal funding for Medicaid, but states administer it.
Okay.
So the states administer that, and each state does it a little bit different, but the states administer those services. And so what happened during COVID was everybody had to stay at home, right? There's stay-at-home orders. People are getting sick. So what happened a lot of times is a lot of these professionals that do this work, right, that actually provide these services in home or in an apartment or wherever the folks with a disability are living, all of a sudden, might not have been able to get to work. right? Or they got sick themselves and were out for 2 weeks, or they were exposed somewhere, right? And they couldn't expose this individual with disability. And there wasn't enough other direct support professionals to try to help. So now the community's trying to help, or family members now have to figure out, okay, well, what do we do? Do we have them move out of where they live and move back into our house? Some families did that, or, parents had to take a leave of absence from work and make sure that they could tend to their child with a disability. And organizations, couldn't provide more services, one, because they didn't have the funding for it and they didn't have the people. And so one of the things that was part of the legislation this time around was, about an additional almost $13 billion to try to feed into this specific area within Medicaid, to try to improve those and improve and kind of strengthen those home and community-based services, so that if there was a COVID issue with a worker or something like that, there was enough funding there to try to get another person in there, or there was enough funding for, the PPE, right, the personal protective equipment, which that was an issue, right, because direct support professionals didn't have enough of that either. So those were some of the issues from a very general landscape that were a big concern for a lot of individuals with disabilities and their families. So this part of the American Rescue Plan was a big victory for families with disabilities who have those services, because it really allowed them to, or hopefully will allow them to have a little bit of a sense of relief. Again, that was a 10% increase in funding for this year only.
Right.
So it's not a continual one where really there's really a need for that at some point. But you know what? Something's better than nothing.
We'll take the victory. We'll take the W.
But some of the other things that are really also pretty big for individuals with disabilities, because one of the things that you mentioned or that we talked about already is that SSI, that monthly income, which is only $793 a month. Well, most of those individuals also get what's called SNAP, right, which is what we know as food stamps, right, to help them not be hungry. And so this American Rescue Plan, which will not only help people with disabilities but other folks as well, also extended those increased benefits for SNAP at least through September. Right, so those increased benefits that started have now been extended, which again will help to improve people's, food insecurity, and hopefully allow that to continue, going forward. The other piece that's big, this is a really big one for families that I've been getting questions on. I had one yesterday on it. Was, hey, is my child going to get the $1,400 stimulus check? Because they didn't get it in the last 2 times. And so when we think of SSI, right, your child's receiving SSI, and you claimed them, or someone claimed them as a dependent on taxes, then they did not receive the first 2 stimulus checks. But this time around, if your child receives SSI, and even if they are claimed as dependent on you still, they should receive that $1,400 stimulus check. That's a big deal.
Right.
I mean, when normally we're getting $790, we're going to get a $1,400 check at some point, or we're supposed to, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a big deal. Now, again, that also brings in the conversation of, what do I do with that?
Right.
How long do I have? If that $1,400 comes in on the same day as the $790, I've got over $2,000 in that account.
Right.
What do I do? Well, part of the legislation, well, actually, I read this part in the American Rescue Plan. It was in the other ones,
Right.
and I shouldn't assume it'll be in this one. But in the prior to COVID relief, you had a number of months to be able to move that money out. So it was right. So you didn't have to get it out that day. Now, although that was true for the last two, and I think it is for this one, my concern is still always, does everybody at Social Security know that rule?
Right.
I don't know. For me, and for what I would suggest to everybody, if you see that $1,400, this might be a great opportunity to open up something called an ABLE account.
Right.
And just move that money directly in there and let it save and grow and start moving for you and start moving for your child and growth and value. And then you don't have to worry about it if you got it out in time or you didn't get it out in time. Because if you don't get it out in time, all of a sudden Social Security could come in and say, you know what, you're not getting these benefits anymore. And that's going to be a lot worse than the $1,400 extra money. But the beautiful thing is the system has allowed families and individuals a spot to put that money now, and it's called an ABLE account.
Right.
And it's safe to sit there forever and not be counted towards that asset resource limit for your child to continue qualification for these government benefits. So if you do see
$100,000 though.
Yeah, up to $100,000, right? And then SSI, that monthly income, would get suspended.
Check out one of our ABLE account webinars on the specifics of ABLE account, but it's $100,000 before it becomes an issue. So be aware of that. Let me ask you a couple questions, Ryan, that came in. Karen's asked, do you know if they passed legislation recently that the state plans to reciprocate? Is that where they're talking about the expanded Medicaid?
It might be.
In some states who haven't expanded.
Right. Yep, some states expanded Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, when that was passed. Many states didn't. So, many states did, many states didn't. I'm not sure about, what you mean by reciprocation. I haven't heard any of that. Like if the states are going to provide money too,
right?
That's definitely going to be state specific.
Yeah,
and so I don't know that answer.
I read a little bit about that, and my understanding was that for the states have to pay a portion of it to receive any of it from the feds, and for the states who have expanded Medicaid with benefits. So not all states would get it, but
okay.
Check with your professionals locally on that, Karen, if you have any other questions. Susan is asking, why did they take out 1/3 out of total SSI amount if the SSI recipients is 18 or over and is living with family members? I didn't know about that, so new for me.
Oh, I love it. I love it, Susan. Thank you for that. So what happens is when someone applies for SSI, what you are exactly right. If they are living with a family member, then they are automatically going to receive a 1/3 cut. So they're going to end up getting, $550. And the reason for that is what Social Security says is that they are being deemed an income because they are receiving free room and board. Right? They're living somewhere for free. And if anybody else in the United States, and I'll let Keith handle this one because he's a rental apartment owner, landlord. Do you let anybody live in your apartments for free?
Well, unfortunately, one is right now.
Okay.
but normally I would not.
Right. And so that's what Social Security says too. It says, well, since you're letting them live there for free, that is not how it works for everybody else. So you're actually giving them an income by allowing them to live for free. So how do you maximize that SSI payment if your child's living with you? Well, there's a specific Social Security form, and the number's escaping me right now, that you can fill out and charge your child or loved one rent. That's one way to do it. You could charge them a certain level of rent for them being in your home. And then you can send that to Social Security after they receive their first check. They have to receive their first check, because if they don't, Social Security is going to come back and say, well, you said they have no income. How are they paying your rent? Right? You got to do it in steps. You got to get approved. You got to get a check. Then you can go back in the third step and ask them and let them know you're going to charge them rent. And then, for the most part, you can they'll increase that payment. Sometimes they'll come back and they'll ask you to break down your household expenses, and they'll do it that way. So it just kind of depends on where you are and who you talk to when you get them on the phone for Social Security. And as one of the government benefit folks in my office, Margaret, always says, if you don't necessarily like the answer you get the first time, hang up, wait 5 minutes, and call back. I know that sounds silly, but that's her first. It's kind of like if you have a trouble with your computer. What's the first thing every computer technician tells you to do? Okay, shut it down and start it back up again. See if that works.
All right. Hold on. Jill's saying, if your child turns 18 while still in high school, when are they eligible for SSI Medicaid? Is it when they graduate? My daughter is in high school and is turning 20.
When would she be eligible for Medicaid?
18, right?
Yep. So she could be eligible for adult Medicaid as early as age 18, because at age 18 we become legal adults in the United States. And so even though she's still in school, she's still 18. So you could do all this at age 18, even if she's still in school. So I would start doing it now if you haven't done it yet. She's 20.
All right. Let's see here. All right. Nathan's saying, if you start receiving Social Security, I understand that my adult dependent can receive SS based on your benefits. I assume SSI ends and you no longer need to worry about income resource limits. Is that correct?
So when, let's say, a parent retires and their son or daughter is receiving SSI and has been, yes, you are correct that now they will be eligible to receive benefits based on the parent's Social Security retirement amount. And so with that does come some other rules. One is, yes, you're absolutely right. There's something called the Pass Along program, which means that as long as your child receives one SSI payment before they receive a portion of your Social Security retirement benefit, then you're right. They are waived over for that income qualification for Medicaid and other Medicaid services like the waiver. What they are not, again, what they are not passed over from is the asset limit. So they still, even though they have increased their income, and that increased income won't affect their other needs-based government benefits, if you allow that income to accrue in their checking account, because they're not using it all, eventually that's going to become an issue for the asset limit.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, when someone's getting, this is related, but I just want to get an answer to it. So if my son is getting respite hours from a local, I guess that's being paid through Med-Cal, is that one of the things that they're going to come back and seek reimbursement from later on? So any hours that are being used and that they're paying for on his behalf for respite hours for someone else to come in and take care of my son, is that when they're going to come back later and swoop and ask and get it out of the first party trust? Just a quick.
For Keith's situation, Keith has and for anybody else, you might have a first party special needs trust, and that could be based on a settlement that was for your child or something like that. And from a first party trust, there is a Medicaid payback provision, meaning Medicaid can come back and get repaid for the services they provided. So the answer to your question, Keith, is yes. They could tally up those costs and come back to that trust to get repaid at the end of your son's life.
All right. Hey, Kelly, I'm asking you to go ahead and enter in the link to the ARC of North Carolina so people can possibly find out more about what you guys got going on.
Yay.
So I just want to give shout out. I'm just a big, huge supporter of the ARC. I just think they just do tremendous work. So
yeah, well, so do I. Big disclaimer, though, I'm on the board of the ARC of North Carolina. So I have yes, I love them. They do fantastic work, and they have for a lot longer than I've known about them.
All right, let's see. What if John's asking, you may have answered this, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask it for you anyhow. What effect do stimulus payments have on benefits? None, most likely, if they do it like they did, right?
Yes. Yep. So it should not have any impact on benefits. Again, my concern is always about making sure that everybody knows those rules who are making the decision. So for me, I always suggest, even though it's supposed to not have an impact on benefits, if you're not using that lump sum for something within the first couple months that you need to have, like your child needs, then I would suggest it's a great time to look into opening up an ABLE account and putting that money in there and just letting it grow.
I'm a big believer in ABLE accounts. I've got mine.
Especially, this is the exact purpose for it. These kind of things are the unintended. I know $1,400 doesn't sound like a windfall, but let's use that term because it's an unintended amount of money that falls under the annual funding limit for an ABLE account. And if you don't have plans to spend it, the ABLE account is perfect for exactly this reason.
Right. Hey, I can't find the question now, but I'm going to go from memory based on it. I'm sorting through it. Someone was asking about, she has a custodial IRA account. And she's saying, I have a custodial IRA account in my son's or daughter's name. Is that going to preclude me from him or her from being able to qualify for benefits at 18 if it's more than $2,000? I think the answer to that is yes.
Yep. If it's an IRA for them, so it sounds like maybe it was an inherited IRA, and they are under the age of 18 when that person passed away. So then they have to have a custodian on it. But yeah, once that happens at age 18, that custodialship should go away, and then it's their money. So yes, it would be counted as an asset for them for these government benefit purposes that we've been discussing.
And since I can't find that question, I'm just going from memory, but I think that the follow-up question is, can you transfer that money out of that custodial account into something like an ABLE account or into a third-party special needs trust, or does it have to be a first party?
Well, depending on the amount of money, you could take it out of there and put it in an ABLE account. However, if your child has a diagnosis, which I'll assume that is the case, you can qualify to avoid the 10% early withdrawal penalty on an IRA, if that's applicable in this case, right? If it's an inherited IRA, there is no 10% early withdrawal penalty. So again, I don't know all the particulars, but the one thing I do know you'll have to pay is you'll have to pay taxes on it. But if it is an inherited IRA and it's for your child, you should be able to pay taxes at their tax rate, which again should be pretty low at this point. So it could be a really good time to get it out. Again, I don't know how much is in there, right? If it's $300,000, then you probably need a better strategy than what I just said. That'll probably take a few years to implement appropriately.
Right.
If there's enough time to do that, which is why I always say, especially the government benefit planning side, I always talk to parents that it's best to start thinking about this, which I know most don't, which, Keith will attest to, I think, and I don't want to throw him under the bus. Please. But you really want to start thinking about it at 11 or 12. And the reason is if there are assets out there, there's a 5-year look back for Medicaid. So if you can move it out by the time they're 13, you have no issues at all. If you move it out at 15, 16, there's a calculation where it delays when you can apply for those benefits.
I did not know about that 5-year look back.
Yeah. So again, that's why I always say, you don't think there might be a lot to do from this planning perspective at 10 or 11 because you're knee deep in IEPs and therapies and doctor's visits and amen. Absolutely true. Right.
That's good to know because I was not aware of that. Arlene is asking, can he set up a trust in family members' names and have them give the disabled individual a monthly stipend of $2,000? I'm not sure why you would want to do that, but that's the question.
So can you set up a trust in other family members' names?
Why not just put a trust in his name or her name?
Yeah, I mean, if you give money in $2,000 increments, one, you'll be butting up against those asset limits while that sits in the account. That would not be probably a direction that I would head. I can't see in what scenario that I would recommend that type of design. I think that would cause a lot of complexity, a great deal of being on the same page communication with multiple family members and trusts and handing out money and when, especially if their situation changes financially, right? All of a sudden you have multiple family members, I've seen this happen too. You have one who just themselves has done extremely well financially. And then you have others in the family who have not. Well, the ones who have not are going to use up their trust money for themselves. And then they're going to tell the other one that's done really well on their own, saying, well, you got all this money, man, you do it out of your trust. Because you've already got the money yourself because you already did better than me anyway.
Right.
Then all of a sudden we got a lot of resentment building, a lot of anger, because that wasn't mom and dad's thought. But that is what's going to happen. And I know you're saying, Ryan, you can't talk in absolutes. And you're right. I can't, but I will. Because the best families with the best communication, you start talking about money and feeding your other members of your family and things like that, it always happens. If there's one sibling that's the most financially successful one, and they're 2, 3, 4 times more financially successful than everybody else,
they'll pay for it.
They will, and that's what the other ones are going to expect.
Right.
And so what I would say to your question is, I would really consider doing anything for your child with a disability out of their own special needs trust and funding it with the proper amount of money. And then you could have all those other family members involved in the trust decision. But again, it's never their money. So they should be more independent.
Okay, we're going to try to pound through a couple questions, Ryan. So keep your questions short, or your answers short and whatever.
Sorry, that's hard for me.
I know. I'm going to keep you on track. And if you guys are entering questions, if you don't mind clicking that little circle button and making it a queue, it draws my eye that it's a question as opposed to a comment. That would be super, super awesome. Denise is saying that how do you maximize the SSI payments? Her daughter only receives over 500. Yeah, how do they determine that this person gets the 793 and this person only gets the 500? Is it
they do that based upon where they're living? And so again, if they're living with a family member, as we talked about before, they're going to get docked that 1/3 because they're saying you're giving them a free place to live.
Okay.
So again, you got to charge them rent, or you have to show that they're paying a certain percentage of all the expenses.
Susan is a fellow Californian.
All right, there you go.
All right, so we're all messed up out here. So, my adult brother is on SSI, SSA, and a regional center client in California. Can I use his stimulus checks to open an ABLE account? Any precautions on that? And I'm going to add on someone else's question just in the interest of two because they're related. And another person says, can I use this stimulus check money to pay for a special needs trust for him to pay for his own special needs trust?
So you can definitely use the stimulus money to put it in an ABLE account.
Okay.
Absolutely, no worries at all. You can use the stimulus money to pay for an attorney to set up a third-party special needs trust or a first-party special needs trust. Yes. Again, you can use that money for whatever purpose you so choose. I doubt $1,400 is going to cover the cost. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to make that as a joke. It's just
it might be a portion of it.
But exactly, which is fantastic, and absolutely you can do that.
Okay. And welcome, Susan, if this is your first time.
Hey, Susan.
I don't know if it is, but if it is, I whenever I see other California, I always get, I have certain, affections for that. Let's see here. That's the same question. Christine, how should you title their ABLE account? I think it's just in the name of the child as the beneficiary of that. I think, right?
Yep. So again, whichever ABLE account you choose, you go to their website and you open it up on their website. And really, I found, at least the ones that I've called, they all have a toll-free number to call an actual real person to talk to. And so far, the ones that I've called have been extremely knowledgeable and unbelievably helpful about their program. So what I would recommend you do, you get on the website and you dial the phone number and you let them walk you right through it.
Right.
And to avoid your level of frustration.
Oh, and I agree. When I called CalAble here in California, they were super knowledgeable, go here, click that, send this to us here. We need this. Call us back if you got any questions. It was really painless.
It really, and it's kind of refreshing, isn't it, Keith? That somebody knows what their product that they have and they know it that well. I mean, and because I've called multiple ones to ask them questions because I didn't know the answer, and boy, I tell you, every single person knew it. So
I gotta love
great.
That. Paul is
fantastic.
asking, is there an offset for SSI if the adult child also receives SSDI?
Yes, there is. There's an offset to SSI if your child receives any other type of income, whether it's earned income from work or unearned income from Social Security disability income or some type of pension that they may have inherited, like a military. Well, I'm sorry. Nope. I rescind what I just said. So yes, from earned income and from unearned income like SSDI or from that kind of retirement money from parents, like that Social Security retirement money from parents.
One of the things I want to make sure we get in here, because it's one of the promises we've made in the webinar, is what are the benefits that you think that every parent should probably be applying for?
Yep. So there are a minimum of 3.
Sorry about that.
You should make sure that your child and you are structured appropriately to qualify for SSI, that's supplemental security income, which is a monthly income forever. Because what that does is that opens up the door for them to possibly get more money when you retire and when you die. If they never receive SSI and you retire or die, they may lose some of their Medicaid benefits or even waiver benefits if they get approved for them.
So
but if they received at least one payment of SSI, those other benefits will stay in place regardless of what their income might be from your retirement benefits when you retire in the Social Security system. And then Medicaid. So basically you do SSI and Medicaid at the same time. If you get approved for SSI, that monthly income, you're automatically approved for Medicaid. So the card will come eventually. And then the third one is any of the waivers that are part of your state. I would look them up as early as you possibly can, because in some states there can be waiting lists for certain waivers, and they can be as long as 8, 10, 12 years long. And the longer people with and this is awful to say out loud, and I apologize, but it's the way it works, is that the longer people with disabilities live, the longer the wait list is going to be. Here's the reason for that. For many of these waiver programs, states have a certain number of slots. And once those slots are taken, if that person never gets disqualified, right, from some financial error or some other error, or special needs trust, distribution error, when that trust is funded, then they're on it till death. I mean, it's that good, right? Is that you're on it till death. So what that does for younger folks is that if they don't expand the slots and don't have the money for it, which we know where our government is in the land of fiscal issues, right? If there's no money for it, then you have to wait a long time, which is why I would say get on the list. And then in your plan, you need to have a plan for with it, without it, and one in the middle if they change it.
True. Terry's asking, quick answer here, Ryan. Can you charge rent if the 18-year-old is still in school?
Yes, you can.
Because he's an adult. That makes sense. All right. Mike Keegan saying, my question is, do you have to have custody of a person to receive SSI? My grandson is in DDS custody. Who is getting his benefits if he isn't?
Well, depending on where he lives, sometimes if he's not living with family and he's living in a supported environment run by an organization or the government, that entity is receiving the SSI payment, and they're putting it towards his needs that they're paying for.
Excellent. Let's see here. Billy and Pam are asking, well, Billy's asking, is there an asset limit for SSI? And Pam is asking, is there an asset limit for SSDI?
So yes, there's an asset limit for SSI. Right now it's $2,000, which is very low. And is there an asset limit for SSDI? No, there is not.
Okay. Ryan, that was good. Quick, succinct answers. You're learning.
I'm trying. It's very hard for me.
Fanny says, I am my son's IHSS worker. She must be here in California.
Yep.
What will that benefit go away if he applies for SSI? He is 18. That's a good question. I'll need to know that.
It should not, because that IHHS is really a waiver type of program. That's one of those kind of home and community-based services.
Right.
And so that SSI should not impact that. I would ask the provider that you work with just to confirm that.
Okay. So the $793 that someone could get his SSI income, could that go all into ABLE account?
It can be used for whatever purpose the individual wants to use it for.
Okay.
Usually you don't necessarily want it to. Again, depending on your child's disability and ability level, right? We want them to teach them how to use that money maybe a little bit, right? When you're going to the grocery store, you let them pay for something with that money.
Oh, that's going to be scary. He's like, what's the difference between $100 bill and a $1 bill? They both have a $1.
It is really hard. You're right. There's no doubt.
All right, let's see here. Guys, we're going to wrap up soon. So let me see if I got any last minute questions. April says, if my child receives SSI Medicaid pre-18 for disability, should they start applying for those benefits starting at age 17, since it takes a while? I'm going to answer that one.
Alert from Google Chrome, the Ring of Fire.
Oh, sorry about that. yes, April, we should start sooner because my son turns 17 next month. I'm already starting the process of getting all that paperwork completed. So courts are delayed, courts are backed up, everything's on Zoom. So who knows when you're going to get a court date. So I would encourage you to start sooner versus later. Would you like to add to that, Ryan?
Yep, for guardianship pieces, I definitely would. And like you said, Keith, for getting all the paperwork together and the psychological report and everything else you're going to need for both guardianship and SSI, definitely start now and get that all in play. But for SSI, you can't actually apply until the first day of the month after their 18th birthday.
The first day of the
first day, right? So if they're born March 15th, you can't apply till April 1st.
Okay, of the following month.
Right, first of the month after the month they turn 18.
How long does it take to get approved for those? Is it depending on state and resources again?
Yeah, it just depends. Sometimes it takes months and months and months and months and months and months. But if you get approved, they'll give you a back payment when your initial date was. Again, all of a sudden you get $5,000 because you didn't get approved for 9 months or 10 months. Where do you put that? Now all of a sudden we have more money. Where do you think you're going to put it, Keith?
I'm putting mine in my Able account.
Yeah, baby, that's what I'm talking about. That was a softball for Keith. Everybody see that? I laid it up.
Wait, but I got to put a caveat on there because that's what we have to do. But you can only put up to $15,000 in there. So if you've already put in $12,000, you can't put another $5,000 in that case. So remember the limit.
Which is why in the year that you are applying for SSI, don't put very much in your Able account. So there's room to put money in it if you do get back payment.
Well, guys, I don't think we're going to be able to get through all these questions. We'll be here all day, and I know Ryan's got another appointment, and we want to leave you guys with a little wanting something as well, too. So I think we did a pretty good job of knocking through a whole bunch of them. Please, please, please consider getting involved with your local ARCs. They are awesome, awesome, awesome. I gave you guys a link earlier to the ARC of the United States. They're going to be needing our help to help make that law permanent come next September or so. So be on the lookout for emails from me saying, here's how we can help the ARC, help us, and help our kids. Because it's really, if we get this thing worked out, that we can become a strong advocacy for our own kids, it's for our own benefit as well. So whatever we can do to help the ARC, I'm all for it. Well, Ryan, any last words of wisdom before we wrap up for the day?
I think just on that statement there, I have an awesome quote, and sometimes you feel like you can't really make much change, right? You're just one person. But this quote is, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed is the only thing that ever has.
That is so powerful.
And, that's how the ARC started, and almost every advocacy organization started by parents.
Parents being fed up, wanting to make change, from mothers against drunk driving to the moms demand gun reform and all that. So anyhow, we're not going to get into the politics of all that, guys. We're going to stay focused on how we can help our children now and in the future. And I say support the ARC and what they're up to. Sorry, I got my stuff starting to pop off. Thank you guys all for joining us. We will see you guys at the next webinar. Thank you for that. See you guys later.